Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled meeting of the Beavercreek City Council on September 14th. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Bales?
Here.
Councilmember Curran?
Here.
Councilmember Dewar?
Here.
Councilmember Garcia? Here. Councilmember Schwartz? Here. Vice Mayor Adams?
Here.
Mayor Stone?
Here. And I will turn this over to Councilmember Schwartz for the pledge, please.
Before we say the pledge today, I just ask that we all take a moment to reflect on the state of our nation. As we're all aware, this past week marked the anniversary of September 11th. Sorry. As we're all aware, this past week marked the anniversary of September 11th. And that was a date that we vowed that we would never forget. On September 11th, our nation rallied in support of our military, our first responders, and most importantly, in support of each other. We mourned together, we helped each other, and we flew our flags proudly. So tonight, I ask that we bow our heads in a moment of silence and remember that feeling. As we face the struggles of the virus, political tensions, wildfires, and hurricanes, let us remember to be supportive and kind and to rally around each other like we did on that tragic day. Thank you. Will you all join me in the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. You have an agenda before us this evening. Are there any comments or changes?
Move to approve the agenda, Your Honor.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next are the approval of the minutes. First is the August 10th, 2020 regular meeting. Any corrections?
Mayor, I move to approve the August 10th regular meeting minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the August 10th regular meeting minutes as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Now the minutes from the August 17th, 2020 work session. Any changes?
Move to approve the August 17th work session, Your Honor.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the August 17th meeting as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is a public hearing. This is PC 20-8.
This is an application filed by Rachel O'Leary, 1263. Sorry. This is an application filed by Rachel O'Leary, 1263 Lomita Lane, Beavercreek, Ohio. The applicant requests the zoning code text amendment to allow chickens in residential districts.
Thank you. Next. The applicant going to give a presentation to us. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your time tonight. We're going to go through some common chicken facts as well as myths and misconceptions and also how it will impact the Beavercreek community. This is a very high-level overview of the proposal. You'll have a much detailed version in your packets tonight, but we're proposing single-family households with lots 15,000 square feet or larger to be allowed to have 6 hens. That would be the maximum. The coops would be located a minimum of 20 feet from the property line, and there would be a series of 2 permits required for chicken ownership. This is really what we're talking about here. It's not just a fun family pet, which it is that. It's also a more dignified life for the animal. On the right is where most of us, the scenario where most of us buy our eggs currently. On the left is the proposed more humane, healthy situation that we're hoping to gain. Currently, there are many cities that welcome and have legalized backyard or urban chickens. Our county seat of Xenia, Ohio, Yellow Springs, the 3 largest cities in Ohio, Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland, as well as Miami, Florida, Seattle, New York City, the highest populated city in our country. There are actually chicken coops on top of high-rises in Manhattan, believe it or not. Los Angeles, Chicago, and many, many more. In fact, over 80 of the nation's largest 100 cities allow backyard chickens. Many times it's kind of a rural versus urban argument, and that's simply proven not true by the facts. They're in all kinds of situations and environments. These are some chicken questions and answers. So aren't chickens loud? Chickens at their loudest are actually the same decibel level as a human conversation, so that's between 60 and 70 decibels. In comparison, a dog can reach over 90, which we all have in our neighborhood. Aren't chickens full of diseases? Chickens, just like all animals, including humans, carry some disease. Just washing your hands after handling them is enough to easily prevent any illnesses. Actually, cats and dogs, according to the CDC, can each spread over 10 diseases apiece to humans. Some of those are very severe and deadly, such as rabies and MRSA. Chickens can only spread 4, and that's according to the CDC. Chickens also help prevent diseases, unlike my dogs and unlike cats, by eating insects that transfer other things like heartworm, tapeworm, and Lyme disease. Aren't chickens dirty? Chickens themselves aren't inherently dirty. Any animal that's not properly cared for will have issues with cleanliness, and that includes dogs and cats. Chickens are self-cleaning, so they preen themselves and they take dust baths regularly to keep themselves free of pests. So any animal that's covered in its own filth will be susceptible to illness and sickness, regardless of whatever species it is. Another concern is, won't this cost the city money? So chicken ownership currently is illegal, and response is currently complaint-based. So the city is responding to all chicken reports of chickens, whether they're negligent or not. By legalizing chickens, the city would be able to concentrate only on negligent cases, which should be a minimum. Many cities, including Xenia, have found that by legalizing chickens, they're actually saving money or breaking even because they're only responding to the cases that are negligent. We would also be having permits for chicken owners, which would help offset some of the costs to the city. Are chickens smelly? Chickens as an animal actually don't have a smell. Chicken coops and runs would require regular cleaning, just like your yard if you have a dog, or kitty litter boxes if you have a cat. Just as a comparison for the amount of waste that a chicken produces, it takes 10 chickens to make just 2/3 of the amount of waste of one 40-pound dog. So we're really talking about a much smaller amount as well. Don't chickens attract predators? Chickens don't attract any more predators than squirrels, cats, rabbits, wild birds, mice, and other small animals that are already in our neighborhoods and in our yards. Also, chickens are secured in predator-resistant coops at night, unlike some cats, rabbits, and wild birds. Aren't chickens a lot of work? It's estimated that chicken cares about 30 minutes a day. That includes opening the coop in the morning, closing it at night, making sure they have food and water, and collecting eggs. So once a week, you would also dispose of old droppings and then replace their bedding, and once or twice a year, you would do a deep cleaning of the coop. So it's really not that labor intensive. Don't chickens attract bugs like flies? No more than any other pet that we currently have in our neighborhoods. Just cleaning out chicken waste will prevent any insects. Also, unlike cats and dogs, chickens love insects, so they will help control that population as well. They're also found to be a natural deterrent to mosquitoes, and they also love to eat them. Don't chickens require special food? They do require a diet of layer feed, which is supplemented by chicken-friendly fruits and vegetables, and you can pick up that layer feed at Rural King or Tractor Supply, or the Daytona Mill also sells it. What happens to chickens that are no longer wanted? Unfortunately, this is something you have to face and address with all types of pets. So chickens would need to be rehomed in a similar way. Chickens are a little bit different in that you can also eat them if you're so inclined, unlike cats and dogs. Aren't chickens farm animals? The CDC actually classifies backyard chickens as both urban and suburban pets and farm animals. It's more of a quantity at that point. So we're looking at a very small number here. So we would be looking at the pet scenario. These are some of the benefits of chickens. They're great for families in the community. It creates more self-reliant citizens who aren't so dependent on commercial egg producers. I know my family and my neighbors and coworkers all experienced some supply chain issues with the COVID-19 pandemic. So by being a little more food independent, I know that would put a lot of families in the area, nationwide, also more at ease, knowing that they have some form of food that they can rely on. Being less reliant on commercial businesses is more important now than ever. Children could also participate in 4-H projects with chickens. And it would also help people feel more connected to nature, their property. They'd be able to identify more with the lifestyle that they would love to live, and with the community. Chickens are a great way to unplug from modern pressures and demands. They're also great pets. They actually recognize their owners. They can recognize up to 100 different human faces. They enjoy being petted and hugged. I'm sure you've all seen a lot of videos out there of chickens leaning in to be hugged. And they can also be trained and learn to do tricks. And it also encourages residents of all ages, children and older people, to get outside and enjoy a healthy hobby. It helps children understand where their food comes from and sustainability. So often we're so removed from our own supply chain of where the food comes from. Many children don't even understand that process, so this would help them be more connected to that. And the nation is also experiencing a grassroots food movement. I know a lot of restaurants advertise farm to table and locally sourced food, grocery stores do as well, that it's raised responsibly and sustainably. So this would enable Beavercreek citizens to take part in that also. Statistically, chickens are more likely to be allowed in areas of higher property values than lower property values. This gives Beavercreek an interesting opportunity to be a more progressive community and support its residents in being a little more self-reliant. Many residents moved to Beavercreek to be outside of a congested city. So all of us could have lived in Kettering or Centerville, but I think many of us chose to live in Beavercreek because it borders more rural areas. Its roots and its history are based in agriculture. I know on the city's website, the old Daytona Mill is one of the Beavercreek landmarks. So we use these things in a way that's kind of in a marketing sense, yet we don't participate in it as citizens. We've removed ourselves from that. I'd like to plug into that a little bit more and honor Beavercreek's past. Residents shouldn't have to be in a fear that their neighbor is going to report them for having chickens with no protection from the city. So there are chickens kept illegally in the city currently. Chickens become members of the family. They truly are pets, and by separating them from their owners, it causes emotional distress for children and family, the owners, and as well as the animals. And I think it's better to regulate chicken ownership than waiting for complaints from neighbors. So basically, the residents that want to own chickens responsibly aren't protected in this scenario, and neither are the residents that would prefer some form of oversight and have reservations about chicken ownership. So right now, really both parties kind of lose, because there are chickens in Beavercreek. This would provide oversight and protect the residents that want to do that responsibly. Chickens also provide a great pet alternative for people that have dog and cat allergies, which are actually the two most common types of pet allergies. Chicken allergies are actually very rare. So if you have a child or a friend that's allergic to dogs and cats, you can get a chicken. It's also great for the chicken as an animal as well as the environment. So chickens provide excellent insect control without the use of harmful pesticides. I know as someone that has a well, this is something that I think about. Chickens eat ticks, grubs, mosquitoes, flies, and just about any other insect. They'll even eat mice. Some people say they're better at catching mice than cats. Chickens would receive better care and have a better life than on a commercial egg farm. Each chicken truly is a member of the family, and they receive individual love and care, unlike on a chicken farm where you have a factory sort of situation. Many times they're in inhumane conditions, and the life of the animal isn't dignified or respected. They're also great for gardeners. Their waste can be turned into fertilizer just by composting it, unlike dog and cat waste due to the parasites that live in dog and cat waste. And you can use it on your garden and flower beds. So it's much better for the environment, and if you have chickens, it's free. And there would also be less food waste. Chickens love fruits and vegetables that are safe for them to eat, and they're not as picky as I am if it's overripe or stale. So they actually will eat, a flock of 4 will eat over 33 pounds of food waste a year. So that's less waste that's going through our waste management systems, and that's actually being put to good use in making eggs. These are some fun and interesting facts about chickens. I'll just go through some of them. Chickens actually have a language that includes 30 different vocalizations. They communicate things like threats, food, and also emotions like worrying. They experience REM sleep, so they dream just like we do. They understand cause and effect, object permanence. They pass on knowledge to their young, and they demonstrate self-control. They are the closest living relative to the Tyrannosaurus rex, which I think is the coolest fact about them. And ownership of poultry as pets has increased 23% in the past 5 years, so this is a common trend that isn't going away. And the COVID pandemic has also led to a boom in backyard chickens across the United States. Chickens don't require a lot of medical care. However, you may be worried about whether we have a system to facilitate that in the area, and we do. We have local vets that can treat chickens right here in the Beavercreek area. I know sometimes it's helpful to rely on and and bounce ideas off of people with a similar background, similar concerns as yourself. Todd Kinski and Larry Falcon are excellent resources with the city of Dayton and city of Cincinnati that have extensive experience with not just backyard and urban chickens, but also urban agriculture in general. I'm sure they would be happy to answer any questions that you may have from a city-to-city type of perspective. And there are many organizations that support backyard chickens, one being the Humane Society of the United States. One of the principal beliefs of the Humane Society is to reduce animal suffering, and they believe backyard chicken supports this as it reduces the reliance and the support for commercial egg farms and factory farms, which are known to be in inhumane conditions for the animal. And these are the references. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Staff presentation, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The case you have before you is PC 20-8. It's a change to the zoning code, specifically, as the applicant stated, this is a request for allowing chickens in residential districts. A little bit of history. This issue was brought up before Planning Commission and City Council back in 2012, as well as in 2016. They were both times were part of a bigger, a more broad change in the zoning code. Wasn't a standalone issue like it is this time, but both times the council had removed that from the consideration in both 2012 and 2016. And the main concerns in those particular years was cleanliness and noise concerns. Included in your packet is a proposed ordinance, which includes many regulations. Just a few highlights of that. One is, again, no chickens on lots less than 15,000 square feet. So that's just a little bit less than a third of an acre, and up to 6 chickens on lots that are 15,000 square feet or larger, and not in multifamily, so they wouldn't, if the proposed regulations move forward, it wouldn't be in areas with condominiums or apartments or anything like that. Also, there specifically states that there's no roosters allowed. Those tend to make noise at less desirable times than the female chicken would. Also, coops need to be made out of a solid material, so it wouldn't be a light plastic coop or anything like that, but they need to be made out of a solid wood or a composite material or a vinyl material, and be made in such a way that they prevent rodents and predators from coming in and attacking the chickens and making a nuisance. Also, any coop that would be constructed to house the chickens would need to be at least 20 feet off the property line. A typical accessory structure's set back from a rear or side property line is 10 feet. So if they use a structure to house the chickens, those would need to be further back from the property line, and that's just a separation of the animals from the neighbor's property line. Also, there would be a permit to keep chickens in residential districts, and you would need to get that license before you would introduce chickens, so that you can go through the rules and make sure it's not after the fact and they put a coop up that's not supposed to be where it's not supposed to be, and that way all the rules and regulations can be on a give and take basis, or on the line of communication can be fully aware. Also, we have a maximum allowed square footage of accessory structures for residential districts, and that coop would also count towards that maximum square footage. We took this to Planning Commission in August, and Planning Commission recommended approval of the applicant's request. They did add a clause in that this should be reviewed by Planning Commission in 2 years and provide any further recommendations or regulations to City Council at that time. Also, if Council chooses to move forward, I propose 2 additional conditions. They're within the regulations in the packet in front of you. One is that if someone uses a shed or a garage, a detached garage, as a place to house chickens, then those also need to be set back 20 feet. So if they're now at 10 feet, then they would have to either move that or use a different structure. And also, in many of the neighborhoods I've looked at, there's covenants and restrictions. Even back into the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, there's some covenants and restrictions that say poultry, livestock, all that's not permitted within this neighborhood. Some of those are still enforceable. I mean, that's a private matter between neighbors, and the city doesn't get involved in those. But I just wanted to point out in the regulations that this in no way negates that or gets involved with that. I just wanted to make that point clear in these regulations as well. So that language is also in the proposed regulations for your consideration. Again, Planning Commission recommended approval. You have the ordinance, proposed ordinance language in front of you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions following the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this is the public input time, and we are going to have a number of people that are going to speak, I'm sure. So at this time, we would ask that we're not asking with this many people, we're going to pretty much insist that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. You may, however, have a total of 6 minutes donated to you if 2 other people wish to do that. And then as we move through, the people that are in the room now, when they're finished with their comments, we need to make room for those that are in the hall and maybe even some downstairs to be able to come up and make their comments. So be courteous about where you stand or go after your comments. So that being said, this is the public hearing portion, so if there's anyone that would like to address council, please come forward and give us a name and address. Just come right on up. Are you going to be able to stay within your 3 minutes, or do you need some donated
Timed it out. I think I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Kyle Williamson, 4128 Alley. First off, I want to thank you for your time tonight. Before I start, I want to acknowledge that the families that are struggling in Beavercreek and across the country from the impacts of COVID-19. And as a parent of a 7-year-old, I want to specifically thank Superintendent Otten and all the teachers and staff working to keep my daughter's school safe in Beavercreek. I'm here today because I'm against the ordinance to permit chickens in the city of Beavercreek. I do not believe the ordinance provides sufficient protection for those of us that move to the suburbs for a safe, quiet environment. I know that when my family chose to buy our current house in Beavercreek, the idea of chickens could be seen and heard in our backyard would have been laughable to us. My wife grew up on a farm, and from her firsthand experience has always described chickens as dirty, smelly creatures. While we have our own personal prejudices against chickens, I also do not find many of the pro-chicken arguments to hold water. Chickens are expensive and do not ever pay themselves off. Chicken feed and bedding costs $300 per chicken per year, making a conservative estimate of $1 per egg. One study puts the cost of an egg at $2.12, making a dozen eggs $25. There's no financial benefit to producing your own eggs. Many of the form letters reference noise level, comparing them to dogs. They fail to mention that dogs do not live outside and do not require a run to dust bathe themselves. The form letters try to downplay that chickens are not dirty and full of disease, but the fact is that they are. The CDC has been tracking salmonella outbreaks related to the backyard poultry and found over 1,000 cases in 2019 alone, resulting in over 200 hospitalizations and at least 2 confirmed deaths. Chickens that carry salmonella show no signs of the disease. Chickens can also carry avian flu, E. coli, lice, mites, and several other bacterial, fungal, and viral diseases. These are not things we should be introducing into our neighborhoods. While a freshly cleaned chicken coop will not smell, chickens defecate 70 times per day. During the summer, pens will need to be cleaned up to every 2 days to prevent an overwhelming smell of ammonia. I have serious doubts that residents holding full-time jobs will be able to maintain their coops at a state that will not inconvenience their neighbors. Chicken coops are magnets for predators and pests. Just a few months ago, I watched a coyote walk down the edge of my property. I do not want any additional incentive for coyotes to be around my family. Living next to a field, we also frequently deal with mice, and again, my neighbors and I do not need anything else attracting rodents towards our houses. Finally, the form letters mention supply chain disruptions, food source issues, and food waste. I experienced supply chain disruptions in April like many of us, but mine were related to toilet paper, not food. Healthy chickens lay every other day, so will 3 eggs per day keep your family going if there's an actual food emergency? Or is this pro-chicken group trying to capitalize on a national health emergency? The National Library of Medicine published a report showing homegrown eggs are more likely to be contaminated than commercial eggs. That being said, support your local egg-producing farmers if you're concerned about your food supply. If you're concerned about your food waste, I encourage you to compost. We've had our compost for 2 years, and it's been great. Finally, chickens are not a hobby. They're agricultural entities and do not belong in neighborhoods. If nothing I've said convinces you, please, I encourage at least a 1-acre minimum. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Just help yourself. Come right on up. Hi.
My name is Tammy Haney Barnes. I live at 3418 Greer Drive. I wanted to thank you for your time here. I am interested in the chickens for personal reasons, for allergies, and self-sufficient. Myself and my grandkids and my grown children, we have allergies to cats and dogs. And chickens are lovable, and you can take care of your pets. I had a cat when my kids were growing up. I had to take allergy meds, wait till it was grown. You keep your cat litter clean box. People didn't even know I had a cat. They come in my house, you could not smell it. You take care of your animals. And I had a full-time job, you know. But also, my grandkids are looking forward to having a 4-H project. I have 2 twins that are 9, one that is 12, and one that is 14. And they are eager to come over and help take care of them and have something that they can love on that's not an allergy. So I am for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Brad Couturier, 2775 Stafford Drive. First, thank you for your presentation. This guy's arguments are laughable at best. It's merely a Wikipedia search. I support this, so I ask you to please, if you have any questions, come on over to my house. You can listen to my neighbor. He's definitely louder.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good afternoon. Once again, thanks to Rachel and Larry for a great presentation. Where do I start? Oh, Mylan Kennedy, 1334 Lomita Lane. Little background real quick. I have a farm 500 acres, milked 80 head of Holstein cattle, had 300 chickens. The gentleman's rebuttal or his initial is totally not in line with the truth at all. People don't raise backyard chickens for money savings. It's a hobby. It's no more than gardening, golf. How much do you have in a set of ping clubs? You make any money? It's a relaxation. It's a lifestyle change to unplug from technology. It's to show your kids and grandkids where food comes from. It's a great opportunity to connect with nature, get outside, and there's just so many aspects of this that are positive. There's no negatives that I see. And I've raised a lot of animals for 35 years. Chickens are probably, if any animal can be dirty and smelly, that's a person's fault for not being responsible. People that get into backyard chickens, they have a tremendous investment in this, and it's not a money saver. It never is, but it's something, it's a hobby, just like golf. Does a 40,000 bass boat make you any money? No, it's something you enjoy doing. And I think everybody should have the opportunity to do this. It's very, very good, wholesome activity for the entire family. And I just think that you should really, I implore you to pass this. This is the 3rd time it's come up. It's not going to go away. As more people come in from different parts of the country, from the base and from, like, I work at Northrop, all the aerospace, the young engineers I work with, they all, you know, they like that lifestyle. They want a simpler time. They want to show their kids things. And just one brief instance, I've got a young engineer at work, and I said, you've got to come to Beavercreek and live. It's a great place to live. And he goes, Mylan, I'd love to, but I can't. And I said, why not? He goes, because they won't let chickens. They won't allow us to have chickens. So he's looking elsewhere to live. This is a professional at Northrop, and so those are the kind of people that you're kind of negating. I mean, you're kind of barring them from living here because the lifestyle they want, we don't provide, which I really think it's kind of sad that it makes Beavercreek look kind of like a backwards community that we don't allow chickens, because it's a progressive movement. It's a homesteading thing. It's nationwide, and it's growing and growing daily. So I implore you to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Penelope Smith. I live at 1757 Turnbull Road. I am also in favor of this proposal. I would love to have some backyard chickens for the fresh eggs, and I also am not in it for the money. I'm more in it for the sustainability, for myself, for my family, teaching my grandkids about the cycle of life and taking care of animals that come and take care of you as well with their food. You know, we've got cats, we've had dogs. They're great, don't get me wrong, but they don't, you know, other than the emotional support, they don't really give you anything back. I think it would be a wonderful way for my grandchildren to learn how life actually works, you know, and it would be a hobby. I look forward to, you know, hopefully with your approval, getting myself some chickens for my backyard and doing all the proper things that need to be done to be, you know, to be in line with whatever regulations. I'm not in it to make my neighbors angry. I don't think any one of us, you know, really want to get these chickens just to make their neighbor angry or just to make their property smell or look bad. You know, I think we all have good intentions here, and we all just want to be able to do, you know, something for ourselves that makes us a little bit more sustainable. So thank you for considering this, and hopefully we get an approval and we can move forward.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Next, please.
Hello, I'm Amber at 3942 and 4000 Darden Drive. I'm the owner of Double Infinity Stables and 3-in-1 Tree Service. We are for the chickens. We own chickens because we have 16 acres in the city of Beavercreek. Be Hope Church just had an event this weekend, and hundreds of people came there, and they asked us to bring some of our animals there. 2 of the animals we brought were chickens, and to see the just the effect of chickens on people it's not a farm animal. It's not just a farm animal. Yes, we raise them, we sell the eggs, but just seeing little kids coming up and holding them, you see a difference in people. People come to my farm for therapy. Kids groups come there and everything else, and one of the main things that they like is actually chickens. They go into the chicken coop. I mean, these kids that they're growing up in the city. They've never been on a farm or anything else. They're in there right with the chickens. The parents are loving it. So I know what it takes to raise chickens. I know how to keep them clean. My neighbors come over. Is it something you're going to get rich on? No, it's not. But I also know, like, the noises, everything else. I have coyotes on our property. We protect our chickens. They have easy ways where they have self-opening and closing doors, even for the chicken coops. My chickens put themselves away every night. So it's not an attraction to coyotes at nighttime because they put themselves away. My chickens run to me when I go out there. So yes, they recognize you. They're not just dumb birds like a lot of people think. So, you know, I think for people in the city to have this experience and be able to have their own eggs and everything else, I don't see a harm in it. For having 6 hens, I don't see any harm in that. So, yeah, we're just here to show you that we have it within the city. People's yards right up to it. We're actually the selling point for our neighborhood because people know that they can live right next to our farm. Heck, they're living right next to horses, which, I mean, that's probably stinkier than chickens, so. But they love it, so I just, you know, her presentation was amazing. She gives you all these facts and everything else that I can't give you. I can just give you my own personal experience and, like I said, what I saw this weekend with people just seeing 2 of our chickens at a church, in church. So they allowed us in the lobby with our chickens, so they can't be that bad. So we're for it. I hope these people can experience just a little bit of what we get to experience. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, please. Hey.
Hello. My name is Linda Kennedy. I live at 1334 Lomita Lane. And I just want to say that I fully support this initiative. I see no reason, justifiable reason, why we would not be allowed to have 6 little hens, if we so desire. I realize that not every person is going to want chickens, but for those of us that do, it would be wonderful if we could. The chickens are already in Beavercreek. I see them. I see them throughout the neighborhood. So I'm hoping that council does the right thing and makes them legal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Corey. I live at 2408 Rolling View Avenue. I'm actually one of the neighbors from the lady previously who lives on 16 acres. She's absolutely right. That was a huge selling point to moving to that neighborhood. Not only does she have a farm, there's also an additional horse farm along with all the other horse farms and large agricultural properties throughout Beavercreek. So as a resident that has a regular lot, it seems very unfair that I can't just have 6 chickens. She is right in saying chickens are more than just farm animals. Even when I walk up to the farm to help take care of the chickens, they even come running up to me. So when they see once, twice a week. So they even recognize me as someone who doesn't even live there. I do not own those chickens. I just help take care of them. Pointing out that having a full-time job and you cannot take care of chickens is a lie. I work a full-time job and I still have plenty of time to go up and help take care of their multiple chickens, horses, and other animals they have up on the farm. Another point, I was talking to the superintendent of Beavercreek City Schools, and with Beavercreek not allowing any agricultural animal sites on farms, we have no 4-H and no FFA programs that I can find available at Beavercreek City Schools, or even at Greene County Career Center. It's only for the Xenia and Cedarville students. So allowing these chickens would also open up scholarships and grants to our students of Beavercreek, which could help people who may not have been able to afford to go to college or may not have known what they want to do now that they've been introduced to agricultural. They could go and apply for these grants and scholarships and then be able to go to school at little or no cost to them. So I am extremely for this proposal. I see no problems having any of these chickens. 6 chickens is nothing compared to what I know some of these farms have around here. When we were looking to buy our house, we saw them riding a horse down the middle of the street. Huge selling point. I don't know with the amount of farms around Beavercreek why anyone can be opposed to chickens, because they're already here legally on multiple farms along with other animals. There's sheep, goats, pigs. I don't see why chickens would be such a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, Monica Donahue, 3971 LeBon Road. I totally support the having backyard chickens for the sustainability of it and the educational value that it has on our children. There's so many children today that do not know where our food comes from. For the environment as well, they eat insects and they will eat your garbage. I have a worm farm, so they eat my garbage. But I just think it's a plus. And people, there is people out there that will rent you the whole setup in case you're unsure of whether you want to get into the chicken business or not. That you can rent the coop, the chickens, and everything. So that's out there. And on the pet value part of it, I belong to a pet therapy organization, and at one time we did have a chicken. And that chicken went to the nursing homes, and any of those people that had lived on a farm, they were so happy to see that chicken. So they are trainable. So they're a pet. For the food value, I just can't say enough of the positive aspects of raising your own chickens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Is it okay if I take my mask off?
Yes, sir, you may.
I just have a quiet voice. My name is Seth Wagaman. I live at 2782 Big Woods Trail in Beavercreek. I submitted a letter on July 6th, which was not included in your agenda today. So I wanted to stand up and just let you know that I support this initiative. As a child, I was able to raise chickens I lived on a farm, so it was probably a different experience than it would be here in the city. And I understand what you're trying to do here is you're trying to balance the need to have to send out people to tear down chicken coops and dispose of chickens who are causing problems versus the need to give people an opportunity to try something. I think it's wise that you have a 2-year review period in your draft at present. And I would hope, and I believe it probably will happen, that after 2 years are up, you'll find that you may be able to actually relax your restrictions somewhat, which I would appreciate because my lot is less than 15,000 square feet. I would like the opportunity to try to raise some chickens. There will be some people who will cause problems. There always will be. There's people who cause problems with dogs. There's going to be animals that are wild that will cause problems for people who have chickens, just like they cause problems for other people with other pets. There's always going to be a little bit of problems, but I believe that the amount of benefit to our community will far outweigh the small amount of problems that you will see. And I hope that you will give this initiative a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa Brock. I'm at 1835 Haynes Road. I wanted to say I'm in full support of the Backyard Chicken Initiative. By allowing chickens in the city, it would help my family and my husband and I become a little more self-sufficient. The waste that the chickens give out is used in our garden as fertilizers. It is a very big learning lesson for all ages. Our neighbors on Haynes Road agree with this initiative, and some of them have sent in letters to you guys. I hope you will give careful consideration to the proposal, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, who's next?
Good evening. My name is Todd Brock. I live at 1835 Haynes Road. Lisa's my wife. 100% in support of the initiative. Cheryl's done an awesome job with the presentation. A little bit of background, the supply chain's broke. I don't know if anybody's noticed that or not, but there's a lot of things you cannot get anymore. And things that were taken for granted, such as bicycles. You can't get a bicycle anymore unless you go to the used marketplace or go out of state. So it's not even a community issue, it's state issues, So I'm not really sure where anybody thinks they're gonna buy anything, because it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And I work in the transportation industry out of Chicago, one of the giant Midwest supply chain hubs that feeds places like Beavercreek. Okay? It's equally as bad up there. Some days you can get bread and eggs, some days you can't. So by allowing you to have 6 chickens, which is nothing, most of my friends in Oklahoma and Texas have 200 to 400 chickens. And that's to feed their family. That's not selling out the end of their driveway. So the more self-sufficient you can become, the better off your life will be. And God forbid society completely collapses. You already see this in Portland and Seattle and other places. So, in my family, we do everything. We garden, we raise what we can, we pressure can, and my self-sufficiency is spreading out to the neighborhood. Now, my neighbor's got a garden. They didn't have a garden last year. They had weeds. Now they spend time as a family unit in their backyard, in their garden. If they had 6 chickens, because they don't have dogs, they don't have cats, if they had 6 chickens, then that's even more. And what the gentleman just said about the 4-H program is a travesty. Because in case anybody has not been here their entire life, 4-H is huge. We are agricultural community. We are agricultural people. If you work at the base during the day, you came home and worked in the garden at night. That's what my grandpa did. I now live in my grandpa's house. He built the house in '54, moved in '57. It's agricultural community. You didn't have these big subdivisions in this town 40 years ago. You had farms, and you had people that farmed. and they had jobs. They went to work and they came home and they farmed and they fed their family. That's how it works. And we've gotten away from that as a society, and now we're starting to pay the price for it. You know, let your sewer back up and try to find a plumber. They get to you in a couple weeks, but you need the plumber now. So this is one big vicious cycle, and this initiative, as small as it is, 6 chickens, is huge. There's a lot of people who have never had a pet. For whatever reason, they lived in an apartment, they couldn't afford it, they didn't know anything about it. You know, and there's enough of us that do know about livestock and gardening and canning and these other simplicities of life that we can spread the knowledge. You know, so I just think it's an awesome idea, and I hope you as the council give serious consideration to what we're asking. You know, and the 2-year period's pretty awesome too, because that gives the city as a community time.
That was your timer.
Okay.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Yep, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
I was daydreaming. Come on, Fuck, please. Okay.
My name's Aubrey.
Hi, Audrey.
Our address is 24108 Longview. I want chickens to be allowed in Beavercreek.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, that's a tough act to follow.
Good
job. My name's Paul DeFlorio. I live at 4139 Gray Circle. Thanks for having us here today. I've got 3 kids in the back as well. I came across this sign, which I could show you guys. It's a message from our government from 1918 during World War I, and it says, "Uncle Sam expects you to keep and raise chickens," which I thought was quite ironic, because in 1918 that was also the last pandemic with the Spanish influenza. It killed 500,000 Americans. And the message back from our government then was you should keep chickens and help to support the war effort. And now we're sort of talking about the privilege from our government to keep chickens. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And it talks here about how raising chickens is pretty straightforward, and any interested child could, with a little responsibility, could take care of it. And in the bottom it says, in a time of war, a patriotic duty. I think we're past that now, thank goodness. This war was a long time ago, although my grandfather was a veteran in World War I. And having spent some time in Iraq and Afghanistan, I'd still argue we're at war, but we clearly don't need backyard chickens to feed our country, right? Thank goodness. But it also says in time of peace, a profitable recreation. I like that. I think the recreational value of chickens in the backyard is manifest. In my neighborhood, whenever there's any animals in my backyard, the kids from our neighbor come and pet them, and I'm sure that would happen with chickens. And the affection between animals and children, I think, is universal for dogs, cats, and goldfish, and certainly chickens. I've been a practicing physician for 20 years. I've seen hundreds of cases, people in the emergency department with dog bites and cat scratches and all manner of pet-induced problems. But I think the idea that these chickens harbor the plague is very overdone. I've never seen anybody come in, never heard of anybody coming in for a chicken problem. So I would close by saying that I think this is safe. I think it's healthy for us and our community and our families. I think if every kid in America could take care of a chicken in his backyard, his or her backyard, we'd probably be a better country. And we're not making decisions for America today, but we are for Beavercreek. And I think that I'd invite you to strongly consider passing this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name's Amanda DeFlorio, 4139 Grace Circle, and I also support backyard chickens. You know, as my husband just said, we are a military family, lived in a fair number of places so far, and when we came here, and this is probably going to be it for us, We chose Beavercreek because we were so impressed by the mix of city amenities, subdivision, the nature reserves, and the agriculture. Our backyard abuts a cornfield. As we drive out of our subdivision every morning, we wave hello to the sheep. Agriculture, farming, taking care of the land is part of this community. And this is actually the first place we've lived where backyard chickens haven't been allowed, and was kind of stunning to us when we found that out, because we are probably in the best position where we could very easily have 4 to 6 chickens without anybody in our neighborhoods ever even seen, hearing, or really like being affected by them at all. We are gardeners, we compost, we just put in a beehive, and chickens would be the next step in that cycle of providing for ourselves, because the chickens help with the manure and the compost, helps grow our vegetables. They give us eggs, we refeed the scraps to the chickens, our bees pollinate everything, and it's all connected. And I would appreciate the opportunity to teach my children how those connections happen and the work and effort that goes into providing the food that we eat, so that they don't just go to the grocery store and eggs don't magically appear. At our last duty station, every morning our trip to preschool coincided with a big chicken truck, a big semi filled with hundreds of chickens in cages stacked on top of each other. It was like you could smell it outside. That's not really where I want my food coming from. I think it's more ethical, sustainable to have backyard chickens. I don't feel like the large farms don't care about the animals in the way that a chicken that's like becomes a member of your family. And I'd like to teach my kids that the care of other creatures is important, and we can serve them as they serve us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Brian O'Leary, 1263 Lomita Lane. I'd like to thank Rachel for all her hard work. My time will be short. The city's already dealing with chickens now at a loss. You pay for it, you're not getting any permit fees. With it, there being a double permit for the right, the privilege to own the chickens, you'll at least compensate yourself for some of the costs. There's a 2-year automatic review. Randy's game is tight. I know he's gonna make it happen. Then we could tweak it, and if there's bad actors, you could weed them out or figure out how we legislate that. There's no logical argument at all for not allowing this trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Cindy Fisher. I live at 3646 Southbrook Drive here in Beavercreek. I moved here in 1973 when Shakertown Road was still more farms than it was plats. So I've lived here a number of years, and I remember when the majority of this was farmland. I was raised by Depression-era grandparents who raised a garden. Everything we canned, we ate. We spent $25 a week on meat and groceries to live, besides what my grandparents canned. If we didn't can it, we didn't eat it. And I still live by that. So the whole issue with it not being financially good, if I grew a garden strictly for financial reasons, I would go broke. But I do it because I can be self-reliant. My husband can tell you I probably made 65 jars of spaghetti sauce this summer, simply because.
85.
Yeah, he's probably not kidding. So I made spaghetti sauce. You know, had the pandemic went on and the food shortage would have continued, we wouldn't have been okay. We'd have ate a lot of pasta, but we would have been okay. But that's what this is about, is being able to take care of ourselves. And we can do that if we can have chickens. I also use the chicken feces for compost or for mulch on my garden. It's a great source. I'm not creating anything that's hurting the environment. I'm helping my garden grow. I just like to see the chickens in Beavercreek. I think the 2 years is perfect. It gives us an opportunity, but I think we need to get back to our roots. Beavercreek is not the houses over in Nutterville. Beavercreek is the farming community and the older homes. That's what Beavercreek is. The people that are supporting this are the people who are trying to make a living every day. We want to show our kids how to support themselves. I feel very fortunate that I had Depression-era grandparents who were willing to do that and taught me a skill that has brought me to where I'm at today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Don't be shy. Come on.
Hi, my name's Sarah Hendricks at 2408 Rolling View Drive. I just wanted to say that I support everything to do with this change. I think Rachel's presentation was awesome. I mean, she covered all the facts and she did a really, really good job. Since we've been looking at this, we've been going around to see what kind of support, what our neighbors think, you know, to get opinions from everybody. And we have gotten so much support and almost no one against it, in my personal views. We've dropped off tons of letters, 40 plus businesses, I believe. So I think overall the support seems to outweigh the against. So that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Evening. My name is Steve Fisher. I live at 3646 Southbrook Drive. I don't like tomatoes, but I love spaghetti sauce. My wife made like 85 pints because I know I had to put them in the closet. I support the chickens. I'm not worried about the chickens biting me like the neighbor's dog did. Chickens are good for you. I'd love to have chickens so our son can see eat eggs. We were at Young's one time. And I told my wife, watch that chicken. It's going to lay an egg. She's like, no, and it laid an egg. So I've never seen a chicken before that lay an egg, but I got to call her bluff. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Anyone? Is there anyone downstairs that we haven't brought up yet?
1 second, checking.
Good. All right, last call. Anyone else have any comments on the subject? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Yes. Now we have written input. Somebody's going to go over the stats on that real briefly. There you go.
I made a spreadsheet of all the written data that we received from residents, many of whom I recognize the names. They also spoke tonight, but we have 92 written public input. There were 3 against, and all the rest are for chickens in Beavercreek. But there is a summary.
Okay. Thank you. Now it is council time. Does council have any input? We don't have to go around the room in an order. Anybody that has any comment they want to add to the, so far? Charles, you good?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I want to express my appreciation to Rachel and all of the people out there that gave a presentation tonight. I spent some time studying the issue myself. I was over in Xenia, spent a little time, had a chance to see some of the coops over there. They presented themselves as a rural agricultural community to me, tied up with 4-H and the fair grounds, of course, in Greene County being very close and part of their community. I think the 2 things that still concern me, one is safety, and I'm talking about this. A good deal, as I drive around, a good deal of Beavercreek is surrounded by woods. We have a lot of woods, and I'm a little bit concerned about coyotes. Talking to farmers, I realize that's another part of this, that they are very much attracted to chickens for a meal, and that these individual wooded areas in here could be occupied by a lot of them, and that a lot more would show up if there was some concentration of chickens. It's a concern, and one that I have. The other that I have already expressed is enforcement. We have one individual in the city of Beavercreek who enforces, and he does everything. Again, it was presented to me in Xenia that there weren't that many complaints. The planning director said that they received just a minimum. But I am concerned about the ability to be able to go out and to be able to enforce the regulations, given that this individual in our department does a whole lot of other things. The individual in Xenia presented a situation where Mr. Forstner, I think his name was, said that they had two people. Well, he had one and then he was bringing somebody else. I think they had two. But I really, what concerns me is that if you pass it, the newspapers say chickens are approved in Xenia or in Beavercreek. Well, the folks in this room will comply with the regulations, but what worries me is the person who sees the headline and then they go out and put something together that they feel fits the need, and then maybe it doesn't get looked at by our enforcement arm in the city, and it multiplies. I just feel some concern about the ability to be able to enforce the regulations with one person. And that's both of my feelings tonight that I would share with the council, and I know I've shared it with Rachel together in a meeting with her. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwartz, any comment?
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, I want to commend Ms. O'Leary. This effort was huge. This is the most political activism I've seen in my short time on council. Unfortunately, we oftentimes see a lot of complaints about the things that we're doing here in these meetings, a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, and people who aren't really involved and want to come and speak and express their feelings and their concerns prior to the issue being presented. So the turnout tonight, the emails that I've received, this stack of letters that the city has received is very commendable, so thank you for that. I grew up in a rural community. I grew up on a farm. I also had chickens. I had chickens. In fact, it was one of our school projects. That's how rural our community was. We raised chicks, grew them into chickens, and then they stayed with our family until they passed. We had no more than 6 chickens, even though we lived on a large farm. I can tell you that we had never had any issues with smell. It was our responsibility to clean the pens and gather the eggs, and it was a great experience for me growing up. I've talked with a lot of citizens. I've heard the voices of those that had reached out to me. I have also reached out to other citizens because I've not really heard a lot of opposition. I've heard less than probably the amount I can count on my hands in opposition of this. And the concerns that I've heard are roosters and coops. Both of those things have been addressed by the Planning Commission and by our planning department. In terms of safety and coyotes and things like that, I too have seen coyotes in the neighborhood. Yes, there is the possibility that it could attract more coyotes in the yard, but I just can't see that being enough of a concern to outweigh the benefit that it brings to this community. I know that my fellow council members have a lot of concerns. I fully appreciate that, but I think that the review that we've placed on this in 2 years, if this doesn't work out, if this becomes more of a nuisance, more of a problem, I think that we have the measures in place to address those concerns. So those are my thoughts on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia, anything?
Yes, thank you. Again, I'd like to thank Ms. O'Leary for her presentation. It was very well put together, very well thought out. So thank you very much. Definitely learned a lot about chickens. Also learned a lot because I, similar to Councilmember Schwartz here, started reaching out to residents to get their opinions as well. You know, we're inundated with emails in favor of chickens, but nobody against them has come out in this big of force as we like. So I'd also like to thank Mr. Williamson for coming tonight. You know, it's very difficult to speak in a room where everybody's against you, and even calling your opinions and thoughts laughable. So I'm sorry to hear that tonight, because that you are definitely not laughable, and you are not the only person who doesn't want chickens. In fact, every person that I've spoken to in this residency does not want chickens. So while we do have a big outcry and out support tonight, I'm hearing a lot of people who don't want chickens. In fact, I had one resident tell me that while searching for a new home in Beavercreek, they walked away from multiple properties because there was a chicken coop next door. So that got me thinking, well, what is this going to do to property value? So I spoke to a realtor who told me that chickens in residential neighborhoods are a deterrent, that people don't want to live into neighborhoods with chickens in residential areas. And while you shake your head and roll your eyes because other people want to live in areas that have chickens in residential areas, there are people who don't. We are a city of upwards of 50,000 people. The decisions we make tonight do not affect just the people in this room, but everybody here who's not in this room, and everybody here who's spoken to me who does not want chickens. And their concerns are just as valid as yours are. The concerns that we had, I think this came up in 2012 and 2016, and someone here tonight said that this isn't going away. The concern I have is the reasons against chickens back in 2016 are the same as they are now. Mr. Kern already laid one of them out, which was enforcement. It's much easier, even though we have difficulty doing it, it's much easier to enforce something that says you can't do it versus enforcing an ordinance with a lot of restrictions and a lot of things that we need to check up on. We're a city with very limited resources, and then straining those resources, I have concerns putting in another ordinance that we have to check up on. I understand that it has a 2-year period where we'll look back, but everybody coming up here telling me that chickens are pets, it's going to be very difficult for me to understand that in 2 years, if this doesn't work out, that people are going to get rid of their household chicken pets because something's not working. And the people who aren't taking care of their chickens could spoil it for everyone else. I know, again, we've had people come in here saying that they've had great experiences. I've talked to residents who grew up with chickens who have had the exact opposite. Terrible experiences with chickens. You can't control the smell, can't control the noise. They attract coyotes. And I have, again, spoken to residents who have grown up with chickens on farms who have said the same thing. I understand that people are concerned that, quote, the supply chain broke down. I have never had a problem getting eggs from any one of the marketplaces around North Fairfield, whether that's Kroger, Fresh Time, Walmart, or any of the other areas, Aldi's, anything that sells food. So, I understand the arguments, but I do have concerns myself. And again, Mr. Kern covered some of those and some of the other residents that I spoke to as well. So that's just kind of my piece for the night.
Thank you. Councilmember Doerr, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start with 2 questions, either for Mr. Burkett and or Mr. McHugh. The second point, in terms of the additions on private covenants and restrictions, does that cover all HOAs and or PUDs within the city?
And there's a lot of the neighborhoods I looked at were mostly just straight rezoning, and there was no HOA, so those are just agreements between 2 property owners, essentially.
Sure.
So if there's no HOA to enforce it, then it would be up to the neighbor to enforce it if they want to against another neighbor through legal action. So that wouldn't be, so you don't necessarily need an HOA to have it enforced. It's more of a court case.
Sure.
Small claims or some other.
Thank you. But an HOA could put it up front and say, we do not want chickens.
I know there are some HOAs that have that, as well.
Precisely. Okay.
Yes, they can
And
do
they
that.
could implement this as well, knowing that, let's say it were to pass tonight, they could then make changes to their own HOA covenants.
Yeah, covenants can be changed if it's, typically it's got to be more than 60 or 66%.
75%.
Or 75%
Sure.
of the neighborhood voting in the affirmative to change covenants and restrictions.
Okay. Thank you. Can someone walk me through what the permit process looks like in terms of, Ms. O'Leary, fantastic presentation. There are 2 permits. So let's say there's a person that lives on approximately 15 to 20,000 square feet. How do they move forward? What's the interaction with the city? What does it look like? Are there fees? How does it move forward? And anyone can answer this.
Yeah, if this passed and became an ordinance in the 30-day period between an ordinance being passed and a 30-day referendum period, then we would create a license, just like a zoning permit for keeping of residential chickens, and we'll list all the rules and regulations on the back, as we do with any accessory structure or any house permit or anything like that. So they would apply for that. There would be a step after, as part of the application, we would look to see how large the property is and make sure that they had enough areas to meet those 20-foot setbacks. So if the lot was so narrow that they couldn't meet that, then we would have an issue there.
I guess where I'm driving is, are there fees
I mean, there
associated
are,
with the
I
with
don't
the
think that
permits.
the actual fee amount has been established yet, but that, I mean, I wouldn't want to put a fee amount in an ordinance anyways, because that would change but there would be a fee, because there would be staff time to, A, review the permit, and B, to go out and review a second permit for the accessory structure, so there would be a second permit fee for an accessory structure. But there would be staff time doing all that, so yeah, there would be fees associated with that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it confirms a lot of what I thought, but I want to run it through those involved, so thank you.
Sure.
I'd like to thank you all for coming today. This has been a wonderful turnout and really wonderful civic engagement. I have 3 children myself, and so to see children in the crowd and interacting with city government is just terrific. I've had a lot of taken a lot of enjoyment interacting with so many of you, and I've tried, I think, to share my views and concerns ahead of time. I want to say thank you to everyone who filled out the survey. It was very instructive as a measure for all of us. It's not statistically significant, but nonetheless 72.6% in favor raised my eyebrows and really made me dig into this in great detail. When you collapse statistically a number of the categories, 49.1% believe that chickens should be allowed on lots of at least a half an acre, which is approximately 30,000 square feet. And so that's based on a survey that comes with 3 flaws to the statistical assumptions or principles when you gather a survey. Number 1, the survey is not bound to Beavercreek. 2, people can theoretically vote multiple times if they clear the browser. And 3, it's not a randomized sampling that you would like in a wider survey. Those with strong opinions on the matter have a greater propensity towards involvement one way or another. So given all of that, there's an awful lot that I've learned and enjoyed learning in this, but I am concerned in 2 major ways, and I've been forthright with those. One is to talk about Councilmember Curran's position, and that's code enforcement. I was encouraged by many of the emails to go out and do my own research, so I did. I have a number of friends in Cedarville that sit on various council or positions of power there. They have backyard chickens with no restrictions, and what was brought to my attention is that it's the number 1 code enforcement concern, which is hence my question on the permits and potentially a licensing and a fee system. I agree with Councilmember Garcia. Once the cat is out the bag, so to speak, putting it back would be a challenge for me, and I'm really concerned with that. I'm also concerned with lot size, and even with the survey, roughly half of the participants said that they want an ordinance with at least half an acre. And so at 15,000 square feet, it is not enough for me at this stage. I do not feel like I have the consent of the people of Beavercreek, and I wake up every morning trying to listen to those people. I'm listening to everyone in this room, but I feel like we need a wider sampling of people, a wider discussion in terms of me feeling comfortable moving forward on this. Like I said, I've learned a lot. I understand a lot more in terms of issues of keeping chickens, smell, usefulness in the supply chain. I love the idea that children and grandchildren are being taught. That's absolutely fantastic to me. But I will keep those 2 concerns there. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Bales?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Burkett, I have a couple of follow-up questions, similar to Councilman Dewar's, but
Yes, sir.
So from a code enforcement perspective, our 1 code enforcement officer would be handling any complaints that we would have?
As of now, yeah. I mean, he handles all complaints we have.
And so I'm certain you've given it some thought about the fee structure and how that fee was going to kind of correlate with the additional duties that he might have, the inspections that he might have, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, most, the interaction he would have with the inspection of the coop after it's done, and that's usually covered, we've got a $30 to $60 permit fee for accessory structures, and that's also, that's where that fee is included in his time to go out and inspect the corners of wherever that's placed. The license structure, I mean, that would be more processed by either the planning coordinator or the associate planner or myself, depending on, you know, who's available at the time or who, and the volume we got in. So if there were a couple hundred permit applications, you know, if we're envisioning a couple hundred, you know, I mean, the time it would take, probably 30 minutes to process. So, you know, we would probably look at a $50 to $60 permit fee for the resident. And there'd be opportunity to also, as we're proposing with other businesses, not businesses, but other things require, particularly businesses though, there's a few businesses that have annual renewals so that we can go out and re-inspect to make sure that they're still, and that could be an option as well, you know, from a fee structure.
Right. So generally speaking, we're hoping that the fees cover the administrative cost.
Yeah, I mean,
certainly.
Yeah, I mean, where we would, the increased staff time needed to do it would be offset with the fee structure. I mean, that's how we tend to try to do all permits. I mean, it's not a money-making business, but it is trying to offset at least some or most of our costs on that.
So with the coop, you talked about the materials needed, that it needed to be built, what needed to be durable, wood and so forth. But have we thought about architectural features? I mean, I would be appalled if my neighbor put up a plywood coop in their backyard, just from an appearance perspective.
I mean, there's certainly an opportunity to add in, like, it needs to be architecturally compatible with the surrounding, with the house or something like that. I didn't get into that far, just more like materials needed to be of a durable, solid wood. I mean, but you're right. I mean, the compressed wood would be technically a wood feature. I don't know how long it would last out without appropriate siding or something like that, but that technically would meet it for the time being.
Okay, so moving forward, if the ordinance moves forward and passes, do you develop those in the 30-day window, or is that something that needs to be?
If we want to add architectural standards such as that, and we would want to put that in before the ordinance would pass, you know, in terms of just architecturally compatible language, just keeping it broad enough to where we can, there's some creativity, but not so.
Second reading.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can certainly come up with language if this moves on to the second reading.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I had for you. Thank you. Ms. O'Leary, thank you for the information that you provided to us. As soon as you sent the email with the presentation, I sent you back my perspective. You know, very similarly to some of the other council members, I've had a bad experience with chickens in the past, in my past municipality where I worked. Perhaps that's tainted my view moving forward. The lot size is absolutely my number one concern, which I shared with you. I just think that a third of an acre lots are frankly just too small. I just couldn't imagine chickens on either side of me in a third of an acre. And then finally, you know, I was concerned about the pet issue because I can understand getting close to your pets. And then, you know, implementing a sunset provision or a 2-year review is nearly impossible once you've started it. So those were my concerns. I expressed to you my willingness to compromise, but you know, you didn't really like that idea, and I respect that. I think everyone brings up very valid concerns, but at this point, I think that the lot size is really my biggest sticking point. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate it. Ms. O'Leary, you did an outstanding job making a presentation. I know you did a lot of work to put it together. And all of you that showed up to talk on both sides. I know you're the only one here that, and I appreciate that. I will tell you that when this first came up, I have a different perspective than everybody else up here. I grew up in South Dakota. I grew up on a farm. I raised chickens. I've had a chicken as a pet. My experiences have not been what I'm hearing in this room. They just have not been. You're talking about having chickens as pets, that they get to know you and things like that. Well, when a predator such as, we have coyotes, we have fox, we have dogs that will attack chickens. The chicken that I had was attacked by a dog. It's not a pretty sight. It's not something you want kids to be seeing. It is pretty bad because they leave parts everywhere. I have been on the phone with several people here in Beavercreek. In fact, this afternoon for 3 hours I was on the phone with people telling me, no, we do not want chickens here. I have talked with real estate agents who have told me the same thing that Councilwoman Garcia said. They drive up to a house, they see a chicken coop, and the person says, no, I don't want to live here. I'm not saying that that's everybody. There's other people, such as yourselves, that will look for a place like that, and that's all well and good. But we have to look out for everybody because, as was said here earlier, we have 50,000 residents here in Beavercreek that we need to look at. Because of my past experiences, and the lot size to me is definitely too small. One of the things that I have a question about is you have a coop, but what about the pen? Because the chickens are not in the coop all day long. They're going to be out of the coop somewhere. Where do they go? Do we have some sort of a pen size setup?
There are regulations that if they're in a backyard, it needs to be fenced in, 48-inch minimum height.
So
fence.
then they can run all the way up to the fences on any property line?
Yeah, I mean, there would be no, yeah, I mean.
Okay, so
there's no secondary interior fence, no.
Okay, that was concern I have. That being the case, because of my experience, when you have kids out there, they walk around, and I know whether you say there's a lot of feces or not, I know there's feces, and it gets tracked in. Kids aren't particular about what they clean their shoes before they come in the house. They pick things up, it goes in their mouth. Salmonella has been an outbreak. CDC has recommended that. You can shake your heads all you want. I did the research. It's there. I'm not saying that it's a major problem, but it's something we have to be concerned with. So, yeah, the biggest things that I have been my own experience, and then the lot size is the major thing that I have. So that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think a lot of the issues have already been brought up. I'm not going to repeat those. I did notice in the emails that I received and the list that we have here, the majority of the people, and maybe it falls true with this room as well, live in old Beavercreek sections. They live in areas where they have half-acre lots. Most of the people that, if I look down these addresses, some even bigger than half acres. And so I can understand that. I can understand you're living in an old Beavercreek neighborhood that was in the day, and I grew up here. I don't know who mentioned they came here at a certain, I won't tell you what year I came here, but I did grow up here, and so I know it was farmland. And so, these, and people had chickens on half-acre lots back in the 60s and 50s. But we are not the same city. We are just not the same Beavercreek as it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Lot size is my number one concern, as you've heard other people say as well, and so I will repeat that one. But lastly, I do want, there's always good in everything, and I do want to commend everyone for coming in tonight. I want to commend Ms. O'Leary for putting together a very good effort, and we'll see what happens. But part of zoning, when you try to create a zoning code, zoning is not necessarily to protect the property owner itself, it is to protect the neighbor of that property. And so that's where we've had, and we've heard other people say they've had input from others, whether it be realtors or whether it be other people that live in the community, that it's that neighbor that may not want the chicken. And just because we say, okay, you can have chickens, that's not necessarily helping that neighbor, on which in most cases you have three, one behind and one on each side, that may not have that desire. So anyway, I'm going to stop with that, and one last round. Any further comments on?
To Randy, I have a question, Mayor. 15,000 square lot. What is the percentage of parcels in Beavercreek that are 15,000 square feet?
Roughly half.
Half?
Yeah, I made a map showing more than half of the residential lots themselves, but about half the city is comprised of 15,000 square foot lots. There's 12,000 or so lots that are 15,000 square feet or more.
Does that include any multi-family lots?
No.
All right. Last call for discussion. Okay, we have this is the first reading of PC 20-8. It is time for a motion if someone has one.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation and send this ordinance to a second reading with the recommended 2 conditions added by staff regarding the private covenants in the sheds.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a second? Hearing none, the motion fails. Are there any other motions that would like to be made?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to deny the motion for PC 20-8 zoning code text amendment.
Second.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I can address, per the code, again, you have really 2 things working here. One is to move it to second, and you also have, per our code, with respect to the recommendation, council has a choice of adopting, amending it, returning it, or denying. So I think if the motion made by Councilmember Garcia is...
Yep, I can amend that motion.
Okay.
I would move to not move an ordinance.
To not move forward.
I would move to not move the ordinance forward. So Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend the motion to not move PC 20-08 forward.
I would also suggest that because of the code, that if council is not moving it forward, council needs to affirmatively determine, in this case, it'd be obviously to deny the planning commission's recommendation, because that's in the zoning code.
So
we have two sections of the code to deny it.
So I would move to not move this ordinance forward and to deny planning code's recommendation.
Correct.
Okay, as said.
A second.
I have a motion and a second to deny this ordinance from moving to the second reading and denying the recommendation from the Planning Commission. Any further discussion?
Are residents allowed to make any more comments before?
No, sir, you're not. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Remember this during the election. They don't represent us at all.
Yeah. Time off? 10? Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to take a 10-minute break.
I appreciate you reaching out to me too, like you said you did.
Good evening, everyone. We're back from our break, and we will move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is a public hearing, PC 20-6.
This is an application filed by N&G Takar, 4365 Lisa Drive, Tip City, Ohio 45371. The applicant requests an administrative site plan review and approval for 1.53 acres of land to construct a 6,868 square foot gas station. The property is located at 3810 Dayton-Xenia Road, further described as Book 2, page 11, parcel 13 on the Greene County Property Tax Atlas.
Thank you. Is there an applicant present tonight that would like to address council? Please come up, give us a name and address. Good evening.
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Amarjeet Thakkar. So I own Energy Thakkar Oil LLC. So I live in Bellbrook, Sugar Creek Township. So I want to develop a gas station over here on Dayton-Xenia Road. So I own several gas stations, which is on, we did last year one on remodeled the Kaufman Avenue in Fairborn, and one on Gibson Drive, 4465 Gibson Drive in Tip City. So okay. Then couple in Delaware, Ohio, last year. So we like to do this one too.
All right. Well, we may have some questions for you afterwards, if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Staff, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Good evening.
Before you is an application requesting approval of an administrative site plan review to allow for the construction of approximately 6,900 square foot two-tenant retail building that would include a gas station and food mart to be located at 3810 Dayton-Xenia Road. So the property currently falls within the Dayton-Xenia corridor planning area, and a part of a requirement of that overlay district is that regardless of whether or not a use is permitted, so in this case the use as a gas station convenience store is a permitted use within the zoning district, it still allows Planning Commission, City Council an additional level of site plan review to be able to look at the site plan and then also have 2 public hearings, this being the second, as Planning Commission did recommend approval with that first public hearing. So the property currently consists of 2 separate lots. As I stated, it is 3810 Dayton-Xenia Road, so it is at the intersection of Dayton-Xenia Road and North Central Drive. The lot to the south, it fronts on Dayton-Xenia Road, also fronts on North Central, and contains an existing building that is currently vacant. It was formerly a bar, and then also has a small accessory structure right there at the rear. And then the second lot, which is part of this application, fronts on Southview Street, and it is a vacant lot. So with this application, as I stated, the property is zoned B2, and that's community business. This application is not a rezoning. The property will remain as B2, and as I stated previously, a convenience store and a gas station are permitted uses within the B2 zoning district. So with this application, the applicant is proposing to construct a 2-tenant building, 6,868 square feet. The food mart portion of the building, the gas station convenience store part of the building, will be approximately 4,168 square feet, and then the second tenant space, to the right, will be 2,700 square feet. So the second tenant space, the applicant doesn't have a tenant for it at this time, but the larger tenant space is for the food mart and the gas station. As you can see by the renderings, the majority of the structure will be comprised of brick with some EIFS accents. I did pass over just a couple of the pictures. This is the gas station that they have on Kaufman Avenue that they redid a couple of years ago. Just to give you an idea of kind of the architectural look of the proposed building, and then also the brick color that they're proposing to use. Obviously, the building that they're proposing here is going to be a little bit bigger than this because it will accommodate an additional tenant space, and then we're not going to have the awning along the top either, the red awning. The only real concern that we had with the elevations was the rear elevation. We were a little bit concerned about the kind of mass expanse of the brick, being such a wide building.
It's 115 feet wide. So we are working with the applicant to revise that rear elevation before we get to the permitting stage. And what the applicant is proposing, which we've agreed with, is to kind of inlay the different color brick into the back of it, kind of in a decorative manner, to break up that elevation and give it a little bit more of architectural interest. And one of the other items is the gas station piers, as they are here on the Kaufman Avenue one, will also be required to consist of brick matching the existing building, which is consistent with the gas stations that we've approved here in the city in the past couple of years. So as far as the access points go for the site, there are going to be 2 access points, one on Dayton-Xenia Road and one on North Central Drive. The North Central access point will be 24 feet wide, and it'll be at the northernmost part of that property on North Central, as far away from the Dayton-Xenia North Central intersection as possible. And then the access point on Dayton-Xenia Road is going to be directly across from the Murphy's Auto Care for safety, and it is going to be 36 feet wide, and that's in order to accommodate the fuel trucks and some of the bigger delivery trucks. And our engineering department was good with the location of that access point. For parking on site, convenience stores require 1 parking space for every 100 square feet plus 1 space for each employee on the largest shift. The applicant is proposing 27 total parking spaces. Our code requires 17 parking spaces just for the convenience store gas station portion of the building. So that leaves 10 parking spaces for the adjacent tenant space. We discussed with the applicant, and he's fully aware that before we release any zoning permits in the future for that additional tenant space, he's going to have to ensure that whatever use it is will comply with our current parking regulations. So something like a restaurant more than likely isn't going to work there because there wouldn't be enough parking. So that's something that will be contingent. The amount of remaining parking would be contingent on releasing any future zoning permits for that future tenant space. As far as the landscaping and the screening goes, the applicant is proposing a variety of trees and shrubs throughout the site. There is going to be a proposed dry pond on the rear lot of the property, and then they're also proposing some shrubbery along the back just to give some additional screening to the residential neighborhood to the north. The landscaping along Dayton-Xenia Road more than likely will not be put in immediately, just because of the fact that the Dayton-Xenia Road project isn't going to be completed until summer of next year. So what we'll do is we will bond that landscaping just to make sure that we have a backup plan for that. And then once the project is completed, then the applicant can go back in there and finish up the landscaping on his site. And then finally, as far as signage goes, they're proposing 1 ground sign, 35 square feet per side, 5 feet tall. We will require that it be mounted on a brick base to match the building, match the piers. And then they'll also have signage on the digital signage on the canopy, like we see at all of the other gas stations that we've previously approved. If they do propose to put any signage on the actual building, it will just need to meet the B2 requirements of the zoning code. And then a couple of additional conditions of approval in the motion just to make note of. We are going to require that all the lights be turned down to 25% when the store closes. There won't be any outdoor speakers, and there won't be any display of any outdoor goods, no salt pallets, no wood piles. We want to make sure that the site is accessible as possible, and then also no temporary signage. So staff and Planning Commission are recommending approval with the 21 conditions in the attached motion. And if you have any questions, I can answer those following the public hearing.
Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing. So is there anyone here this evening that would like to address council on this application? If there is, come forward. I do not see any motion, so we will move on. Is there any written input?
No, sir.
We will close the public hearing. Thank you. And this time, how will we start on the other side of the room? Councilmember Bales, you got any comments?
I have one question for staff. First of all, The building that was built in Fairborn is a very nice looking building. The inside was laid out very nicely, and if it's built that way here, I think that would be fantastic. I had a question. When I watched the Planning Commission discuss this, there was some discussion about the outdoor speakers and what that really meant.
Yeah,
And so could we clarify, like most new gas stations now have a screen and they have a little advertisement that tells you about whatever. And after watching it, I was still kind of confused as to whether or not that was allowed or if it was complete silence unless the clerk said, you know, you owe me some money or whatever.
Yes, I think the Planning Commission's concern was that those speakers can be like very blaring, and what we meant when we put that condition in the motion or in the resolution originally was that there would be none of that. That the intent, if there is, the only speaker use would be for communication between the clerk and the person at the pump. So no TVs, none of that kind of thing, and the applicant did agree to that.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Doer.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to the applicant for your interest in Beavercreek and for your desired investment in our community. Thank you. I have a number of questions. I think the first is an issue of traffic flow. What concerns me is that the lights on North Longview, and there's a challenge of turning left if you're going east on Dayton-Xenia, as well as Central Drive being fairly narrow. And so that, I think I just want to float that as a concern and see what other members of council have to say. Is it enough space? Are there alternate arrangements that can be made? And so I think that's my big one. I think, you know, this is well away from any school, so I don't have any concerns with selling of cigarettes or things of that nature to minors in there. Perhaps I'm overthinking this, but it's on there's a slight curve near here, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but I am a little concerned of a wayward car hitting the gas pumps. And so is there some kind of metallic extension or concrete barrier that potentially could be built in? There's a news reporter for a local TV station that keeps count of the number of times a car hits a structure in the Miami Valley. Sure. And every year it exceeds 100, and it always surprises me. And so that's just the type of thing that worries me in this, because the distance is not far from Dayton-Xenia.
Yeah, and currently there is no curb or anything there, but there will be curb and sidewalk, and I know that doesn't always stop a vehicle, but
sure.
Yeah, it makes it a little more difficult.
So I really like the idea. There's a lot I like, but I have those, I think, two concerns that I'd like to see what other members of council think, and if the applicant would like to discuss, or city planning and all this. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia?
Yes, thank you. Excuse me, good segue. I don't know if I'm as concerned about the points of entry. I think having that entryway there on North Central Drive, to me, is beneficial. I know this area pretty well, and I know what, just kind of imagining what Dayton-Xenia looks like right now, and knowing that there are multiple times I need to go left and come left out of that North Central Drive area. I think it would be okay. The way it looks drawn looks good to me, but I do appreciate you raising that concern. That would be my only comment. I don't know if anyone else has any other similar concerns to that point, but I think the way it looks drafted to me looks like it should be sufficient.
Councilmember Schwartz.
I do have one question on the picture that you had presented. I believe it may have been the Fairborn one, not that one, this one.
This one.
That one.
Yes.
Is that what we intend the look to be?
As in regards to?
Like the yellow signage up top, is that
No,
something
no.
that has
So
to
that
be
it's-
approved?
Yeah, so that's a Sunoco, this is gonna be a marathon. So.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that
it'll just be-
clarification.
It'll just be blue, white, and red, although I don't believe we would be able to regulate that.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Curran.
Is there an access point on the Longview? If you get gas at this station, can you pull out? I can't make it out here. Is there an access point out to Longview that you can go out to the light, make a right or a left?
No, you wouldn't, because if you look at the aerial photo, there's a building here, so there's gonna be curb here. So you wouldn't be able to get out to Longview. It's only gonna be, you could go out to North Central and go around the block if
Oh, I see. Yeah,
necessary.
okay. I
But
got you.
that would be the only way to get out to the light.
Wow, okay. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Adams.
I echo the concerns a little bit of the traffic flow there on Dayton-Xenia. I'm hoping that the change of that, widening it, is going to address that. Right now, I know there's a lot of traffic there, and that could be a problem, but just something to think about. The other question I have, and it doesn't really pertain to this, it's on this, and it's prohibited, but what's a raceway?
A raceway is, it's like a metal structure that is affixed to the building, and then you affix each letter to that.
Okay, so it's a signage.
Yeah, instead of just affixing each letter to the actual building.
Okay.
So it's a way to consolidate the number of points of contact on the side of a building, and they don't look very nice.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure what that
Yeah.
was. Thank you very much. That's all I had.
All right. And myself, I would like to echo the Councilmember Dewar's comment on Central. We know Dayton-Xenia is going to be improved, and they're going to have curbs and sidewalk. Central is not going to have curb on that stretch.
Well, it will have curb on the side of the gas station. The gas station will be required to
Well,
put in
they
curb.
are putting in a curb.
Yes, that is a requirement, always.
Okay. So if you look at Central right now, it is very narrow in a sense, but yet there's probably more right-of-way there than the actual road.
Yes.
So is this curb that they're going to put in, is it going to increase the width of the road any?
The curb will probably be right on the inside of their property line, so it may a little bit, but without looking at the final construction drawings, I couldn't give you a definitive on that.
Okay.
But it will all be curbed all along that side of their property.
All right. I would like to, before this comes back for the next reading, it comes back again?
It does not.
It does not?
No,
Well, then
it does
in that
not.
case, I would be curious to see what it would take, or if there was enough room to widen that area here. You're going to have people wanting to turn left. You're going to have people wanting to go all different directions. And it is certainly not a collector street by any means. So now I need a little advice. How do we still take a step back, or do we can add a condition that says staff will further evaluate it? We could do that.
Yes.
Doesn't mean it has to be done necessarily, but it means that the staff will take a closer look.
Yeah,
Is that
it's-
a reasonable?
Absolutely. We'll definitely run that by
condition?
our engineering department and see what we can do with that.
Okay. Okay, that's my number one concern. I mean, there's no doubt about it. When you're filling in an old area, you have to accommodate as best we can. And if we can make that actual intersection just a hair better, it would be worthwhile. And that can be even a lot of different ways. It can be a larger turn radius coming in, that even if it can't do it for the whole width. I mean, it's just something that I would like engineering to look at and see if it can work with the plans that the applicant has. We can't obviously change those drastically, especially if it causes any parking loss. So anyway, I would like for council to consider adding that condition to the motion. And that is all I have. Any other discussion?
I have
Yes,
one other
please.
question. Mr. Takar, I have a question for you. I just remembered this. When you were building the gas station in Fairborn,
Yes.
it took an extraordinary long time to build. Do you have construction crews ready to act on this? Do you have a timeline you could provide to me? I mean, it seemed like that gas station took a year to get built.
Yeah, because we got the issue with the electric company. They took like 3 months to move their poles, to put the new poles in.
Yeah.
Because we have to replace the poles going the electric from across the road. Because there is a railroad too, going past by there.
Yep.
So that's the why it took us so long. First, we have to buy the next door property. That's the why it was closed so long. Because city, that gas station was in conditional use. So there should not be a gas station there, but they told us if you buy next door, clean the next building too, so then you can redo it. That's why if you see the pictures, the pumps are still the old canopy and old stuff, but then we put the building on the restaurant building. So then we put the two lots together to make it one lot, to make it work for them, however the city require us. So we can work, whatever you guys need, we're going to do whatever the best for everybody, It helps when you have easy access, easy entrance going out or in. It helps anyway for the customer too. That brings us more business. That's the why we bought a whole thing all the way to back, because they were selling only first lot. Then I thought, if you want to sell the other one too, because then we have access to the other road too, because we want to make safer and easier for everybody. Because some older folks, they don't want to get into the main road, they want to go to back roads, That's why we're putting a drive-up window too, to help the people. So if they like handicap or anybody, they cannot drive it, so we can bring them to the window, anything they need it, like milk, whatever they need it for their purpose,
Okay. Thank you.
Every gas station I'm building right now, we're putting the window on every one of them because it helps, like in the rain or any time, anybody, it helps to every time, all the time.
Very good.
And sir, while you're there, is this 24-hour operation?
No, we are not planning to do 24-hour, but if the requirement, like if the customers, like usually we don't want to open the 24-hour, but we usually want to close it before midnight. To open at 5 and close it like 11:30, 11, somewhere around that, before midnight. So, but if the customer is so much requiring, like, they want, then we can see, however. But we don't like to open 24-hour because it's cost more than, to make money.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I'll ask staff, is there any restriction in this ordinance that prevents them from staying open 24 hours?
No, there is not. This isn't a conditional use, it's a site plan review, so we didn't add any conditions as far as the operations of the project.
Okay, not something that we would do then at this stage?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, if there's no other comments, I hope so I can entertain a motion to add condition 22 that staff and engineering review the layout along Central.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion to add condition 22.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to add condition 22, which authorizes staff and engineering to evaluate the area along Central Drive. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Now I need a motion that is read, that's in front of you, if anyone would like to make it.
Yeah, I move for the purpose of taking administrative action, approval of an ASRA detailed site plan for Dayton-Xenia Marathon Food Mart on the basis that City Council finds the facts submitted with the application and accompanying materials and modifications, amendments, and supplementary conditions satisfy the standards and criteria for an ASRA detailed site plan per Chapter 158.083 of the Zoning Code. Supplementary conditions required of this approval shall be as follows, which there are 22. I move that this motion with all conditions be fully recorded in the minutes of this council meeting.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the ASRA PC 20-6. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next is ordinance 20-20.
This is the first reading of an ordinance by Beavercreek City Council amending Title 11 Business Regulations to the codified ordinance of the City of Beavercreek by enacting new Chapter 116 Massage Service Providers to regulate massage-related services in the City of Beavercreek, Ohio.
Thank you. We're at your pleasure, Mr. Burkett, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as this case is before you is an amendment to, or an addition to, of Chapter 116 in the codified, or our codified ordinances in the charter. What this is over the years, and particularly over the last year or so, the staff has been working on we've been getting complaints of illegal, nefarious activities going on at massage parlors, particular and late at night, and the enforcement of that is challenging because right now the law is whomever's doing that illegal activity is the one who charges are pressed against. So it would be the person actually performing the nefarious activities. And the problem is human trafficking is a real problem that exists, and Beavercreek is not immune to that. Many of the surrounding communities have massage ordinances to help curb that kind of activity in massage parlors. Beavercreek does not as of yet, and so it makes Beavercreek kind of an attractive place to run that kind of business. In order to alleviate that concern, or at least help try to alleviate some of that concern, we're proposing this massage service provider regulation. And the challenge was we wanted to balance the proposed legislation with effectiveness and being able to, go after businesses that are allowing this activity rather than just the individuals, because, we bring a person off the street that's doing that. They have an unlimited supply, it seems like, of people they can bring right back in. So we wanted to go after the businesses. So we wanted to balance the legislation of effectiveness, but we also didn't want to put undue burden on the existing legitimate businesses, the legitimate massage businesses in the city. So we came up with the regulations you have before you this evening, where businesses are required to get a registration, and if this passes, the registration would be required within 60 days. The approval of that registration would be by the planning department, ultimately under the planning director's responsibility. There is an appeals process if the planning department were to deny that, and it appeals to the BZA. But basically, we would want the information of the business itself and the owners of that business, as well as a list of employees. And then the businesses are to keep the employees' actual information, such as social security number, any of their license, stuff like that, in the business itself and available on request, so that we're not getting inundated with, from a city practical standpoint, the city's not getting 30 different new applications every day. That we just have the businesses on file, and if we think if we get reports of nefarious activities, we can go in and have reason to just go and inspect the registration and the license and match up. It gives us a way in without having to do any kind of sting operation or anything like that. Also, all requirements that the premises be clean and sanitary, and it brings a better environment for not only the users of the massage parlors, but also the employees and the people in general. So the registration legislation is before you. It's 11601 through 11699. We did send this out early on in the process to local massage parlor business and got their input on what our proposed legislation was, and got a lot of good feedback from them. And they sent ideas that they thought would be, an undue burden. And we took as most of those comments as we could and implemented those in the regulations you see before you. But staff, we do recommend approval of these legislation, and happy to answer any questions.
All right. I know you talked to us once before about the need, why we had the need for this, and so we'll just open the floor. If anybody got comments? Anybody? Just jump in if you do. Charles? Oh, this is an ordinance. I'm sorry. This is an ordinance, and it's first reading, so it is automatically a public hearing. Is there anyone present this evening that would like to address council on this ordinance? Please come forward. You can give us your name and address, and if you need more than 3 minutes, do you have somebody that can donate time to you?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Virginia Brembeck. I live at 1666 Ken Clare Drive. I also work for the Women's Centers of Ohio, and as the gentleman said, we actually see the victims. We call them victims, not workers that are being taken in. I can please consider passing that city ordinance that would allow a licensed massage therapist to work in massage. Ohio has very strict regulations. They have to, a legitimate masseuse has to pass 2 boards, practical techniques and then anatomy. And then they have to be credentialed every 2 years. They even have, if they use tools like hot stones, they have to have malpractice insurance. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful health option, but it is also in the top 3 sex and labor traffic types. Number 1 is illicit massage, health, and beauty, and that's what we're seeing right now. That information comes from Polaris, which is a watchdog organization that helps prevent communities from falling prey to sex and labor trafficking. We need to be aware that the Asian massage businesses are the #1 industry linking to human trafficking activities. We as a community need to be educated on identifying the signs of human trafficking. We work strictly with, very closely with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office Human Trafficking Liaison. Her name is Tanya Folks. She gives excellent training. We have to undergo training about once a year, how to identify the red flags. And the 2 businesses on Dayton-Xenia have so many red flags, it's unbelievable. And we also, as the Women's Centers of Ohio, see a lot of the victims. The victims are taken into custody, they're bailed out, and then they're disciplined, and then they're sent up the 75 corridor. So we've got to shut down these businesses, and this is one excellent way to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, is there any written input? All right, we will close the public input right now then. Comments from council? Sir, go ahead if you do.
Your Honor, a question for Randy. Enforcement mechanism on these, would you clarify that again?
Yeah, they'll have to get a business license, and
Okay.
And once a year, they got to renew that license, and if we get complaints, it gives us an opportunity to get into the doors, really what it is.
Okay. Who does the enforcement, though?
It'll be the code enforcement officer in conjunction with the police department. But
okay.
The intent here, it really is to discourage businesses from, because an illegitimate business is not going to register, and that would give us an opportunity. So the intent is not to ever have to enforce it, to discourage them from not coming to begin with.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone?
I just want to say that I think this is a very important initiative. I'm glad that the city has taken this on. We live in a beautiful and a wonderful community, but that doesn't mean that our boundaries act as barriers for, as you term, nefarious activity or for sex trafficking in that matter. I have known of a particular massage parlor that has been engaged in such things and was shut down. And it was because of some of the citizens and the people who worked in that community who noticed suitcases and women being trafficked in and out in big vans and things of that regard here in this community. And so I really commend staff on putting together this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, just a quick question to follow up with what Mr. Kern was saying. So you said that there's the permit process to get the license, and then they have to renew it every year. Will there be enforcement if that's not renewed every year, or will there only be enforcement if there's complaints?
That, the renewal, I mean, there'll be enforcement if they don't renew,
Okay.
but that's just, it's an application and a list. So they can do all that online, never having to come in, it's just submitting a list in the application.
No, great, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Gentlemen?
To add on, the same, if you drive by a massage parlor that hasn't registered, you will be proactive, right? Take action to make
Yeah,
sure
I
they
mean,
get
we would,
registered.
if we knew of one specifically that wasn't registered, yeah, we would ensure that they did register as required, but yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I would simply like to thank you all for your very hard work and your meticulous work on this. It's very detailed, and I think it'll be a great addition to Beavercreek. I'm very thankful for the citizen comments. I think that's very, very helpful, and I'm excited for this ordinance to move forward. I think it can make a real difference, so thank you for your hard work.
Vice Mayor?
On the registration process, you say you can do it online, are you doing anything to follow up with that to make sure that it is legitimate business, or they can?
We would review the application, and when they do apply, they'll have to provide their certifications and stuff like that before we would approve it. So there would be, I mean, that's why we're going to charge the registration fee, is to offset the staff time that we're going to need to look up with the state, the health board, and make sure it's a legitimate license and make sure we're getting correct information.
Okay, good. Yeah, after listening to a presentation at Rotary the other day on human trafficking and how prevalent it is around here, this couldn't come it should be already in place, so. Thank you, that's all I have.
All right, so on-site, we're not going to do on-site inspections of these facilities, correct?
Only on a reactive basis. If somebody makes a complaint, then we would.
Does the health department regulate these licenses that the staff has to have? Does anybody know if they do on-site inspections?
Are we talking about the state regulatory board,
whoever? I mean, part of the discussion was that you would have a facility that is not only above board, but clean and all that sort of thing. Well, somebody then has, in order to mandate or to ensure cleanliness, whether it be a restaurant or whether it be a carryout, I mean, you have the health department goes out and looks at those things. Or is there a means that the health department has authority over this type of business? Anybody know?
I mean, this would be more of something it would be an additional charge that we would levy against a company that's is not following our ordinances.
The intent of this was not really to compete or supplement the health department with whatever they're going to do. Really, the intent here and the hope is that once this is adopted, the city can then be proactive with respect to businesses and notify them. I think several businesses, because we have a two-tier process in here. For those who have state licenses, it's a much different, lesser process than those who don't, because we know that's where the issues are. People with their state license really are not the issues we've got, so we certainly will do that, and certainly there'll be coordination. But the problem is as Mr. Burkett said, is that, and I think the chief and could also testify to this, but right now the process is that we go after individuals, but that isn't affecting the business, and so this,
No, I understand that, and I mean, we've had these discussions before.
Yeah.
My concern is, again, we go back to the chickens, and my concern is staff time. And if I can see this leading, and we're going to do it. I mean, it has to be done. I'm just trying to figure out how, is it going to need to be tweaked down the road? Anytime you license something, you should be, so are you licensing the individuals or the facility?
It'd be the facility, because if there's an individual of the three
Okay, so
facilities, they're
that
going to have to get 3
include-
licenses.
That means a building and a place.
And the owner, yeah.
Which means now you've got to ensure that that physical space somehow is
Yeah.
appropriate as
Yeah.
well. I think it's something we need to look at down the road and see what we have to do. This is a great step. I mean, I'm not denying that. It needs to be done. But I can see down the road, we're gonna end up having to do something that's gonna take some manpower down somewhere.
I agree. I think this is a good first step, but I think, I think it accomplishes the purpose that it's meant to,
Yeah.
is that it puts the onerous burden then on the facility, because we're licensing the facility, so for this facility to stay in operation, that they are now, I mean, even more so than they were before, but they are now responsible for their workers and what happens in their facility. So I think as a first step, this is great, because it will put that burden now on them, so we shouldn't have to be in their, really, in their business and what they're doing, so.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if there's no other comments, I would
Please.
motion to move ordinance 20-20 to the second reading.
I have a motion and a second to move ordinance 20-20 on to the second reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next is ordinance 20-21.
This is the first reading of an ordinance repealing current section 7507, signal device on bicycle, and 7508, lights and reflectors and brakes of the City of Beavercreek Code of Ordinances, and adopting new section 75.08, bicycle signal devices of the City of Beavercreek Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. Is that still you, Mr. Burkett?
This is still me.
All right.
Yes, as the clerk read, there's a current section in our Code of Ordinances that actually require, it states that if you're passing somebody on the street or the bike path, or you're required to have an audible bell and use that bell when you are passing or when you're on the street. In coordination with our Bikeway Advisory Committee, as well as looking at what other communities have done, and in coordination with the Ohio Revised Code, we're suggesting to remove the requirement of the audible bell and stating that they may be allowed to have an audible bell. We found that most people are more comfortable just yelling out passing on the left or passing on the right rather than a bell. And most bikes that you buy nowadays do not have a bell. That would have to be a secondary purchase or an additional step required if you're going to be a bike owner. And I've had 5 or 6 bikes and I've never had a bell. So I guess I've had illegal bicycles out there. But I've always doors right there. But I can run. But I've always yelled passing on the right or passing on, or more likely people passing me than me passing them. But and to go in line with the Ohio Revised Code, we suggest the changes as seen in the ordinance.
All right. Sounds reasonable. This is an ordinance, and I won't forget the public input this time.
Correct.
This is an ordinance. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to give input on this ordinance? Seeing none, is there any written input? No. All right, we will close the public input. Any discussion? Do I hear an ordinance, or a motion?
Motion, Mr. Mayor, to move ordinance 20-21 to the second reading.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to move ordinance 20-21 on to the second reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is resolution 20-23.
This is a resolution to authorize the Beavercreek Police Department's acceptance of the Ohio Traffic Safety Selective Enforcement Program grant.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, somebody besides Randy. The Beavercreek Police Department was notified of our eligibility to receive a grant through the Ohio Traffic Safety Office to provide funding for what they call High Visibility Enforcement, or HVE. HVE is a universal traffic safety approach designed to create deterrence and change unlawful traffic behaviors. HVE combines highly visible and proactive law enforcement targeting a specific traffic safety issue. STEP, or otherwise known as Selective Traffic Enforcement Program. Hours for that must be used to conduct HVE activities in areas to impact fatal crashes by targeting occupant restraint, speed, distracted driving, aggressive driving, failure to yield, etc. The STEP grant eligibility is for a maximum of $22,913.52 of reimbursement to the city for officer overtime and fringe benefits. Included in this amount is transportation, fuel costs reimbursable up to 5% of the total labor costs. And there is no local match required for this grant. The grant period runs from October 1 of 20 through September 30 of 21, and staff recommends council the acceptance of this grant.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? This is a grant that we've applied for in the past, I believe.
Yes,
And,
several years now.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I would just say, I know we always talk about our staff and the great job they do in soliciting grants, and also our police department for doing that. So I said earlier tonight, we are a city on limited resources, so I appreciate everything you do to try to make our officers better with the resources that we have.
Thank you.
Well put. Do I hear a motion?
And I would move to approve Resolution 20-24.
Second.
23.
I'm sorry, 20-23, getting ahead of myself.
All right, any further discussion? I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 20-23. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next is Resolution 20-24.
This is a resolution to authorize the Beavercreek Police Department's acceptance of the Ohio Traffic Safety Impaired Driving Enforcement Program grant.
These are two separate because they're obviously two different grants. However, the IDEP grant we received eligibility for as well. IDEP is the Impaired Driving Enforcement Program. And this, again, high visibility enforcement, it's a universal traffic safety approach designed to create deterrence and change unlawful traffic behaviors. It combines highly visible, proactive law enforcement targeting a specific traffic safety issue. Our IDEP hours must be used to conduct HVE activities in areas to impact impaired driving, fatal crashes. The IDEP grant eligibility is for a maximum of $32,120.27 of reimbursement, again to the city for the officers' overtime and fringe benefits. This amount also includes, again, the reimbursement for transportation costs up to 5% of the total labor cost. And there, again, there is no local match required for this grant. Grant period, again, runs from October 1 of 20 through September 30 of 21. And again, staff recommends the acceptance of this grant.
Thank you. Any input, council?
I have a question.
Please.
Yes.
With that grant, do you intend to set up separate enforcement activities based on that grant, or is it just a part of your routine focus of your officers?
Both of these grants are have a set amount of hours, and it runs anywhere from 300 to 400 hours, and that's how they come up with the dollar amount. And a lot of those grants, the STEP grant includes, selective traffic includes like our click it or ticket campaigns, which run typically in May and in the August timeframe. And then the impaired driving enforcement grant is more so geared towards impaired driving. So that runs with the Drive Sober, Get Pulled Over campaign that takes place in August. These are set aside hours. Again, each of those have several hundred hours set aside for that. It's on top of our normal routine and patrol duties. And those are times, and we have some flexibility in that, but they're like impaired driving has to be from 6P to 6A, where the other one can be pretty much any time of the day. And they do have those big campaigns that typically run around the Super Bowl, holidays, Thanksgiving, and so forth. So they're set aside hours on top of what we're already doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Do I hear a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 20-24.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 20-24. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on. It is now council time. And we would like to start this evening with Councilmember Dewar.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a short presentation I'd like to make. Titled, Where Does Each Dollar of Your Property Tax Go? So, forgive me, the professor and me might come out for a little bit. So, but as you see, before the citizens on November the 3rd, there is the Earned Income Tax Initiative, and so I'd like to talk a little bit about that today. Where does each dollar of your property tax go? Well, in the city of Beavercreek, property tax is a major revenue stream for the city, and it's assessed to collected at the Greene County level. For each $1, as you see on the board, only 17 cents is allocated to the city of Beavercreek. In our community, higher levels of government have limited their fundings for schools, so we see 54 cents to the school district. I have 3 children. This is, I think, a very important initiative. But taxpayers pay a significant portion of that fund. We also have, as you see, responsibilities to the Greene County level, various levies, for example, and to the township that formally runs our fire department, through which we get our services in the city. And so passage of the earned income tax would effectively allow for some space for other jurisdictions and their levies. If we get to the third slide, property taxes pay for the Beavercreek Police Department. You see 43%. We have various streets and park funds and levies, depending on what you, the voters, pass. And then the 1.6%, as you see, with public service building debt, which is set to expire in 2022. If the earned income tax initiative is passed in November, 3.4 mils of property tax pertaining to a street levy will expire on December the 31st, decreasing the 40 cents down to 19 cents. So depending on your property tax, the value of your home, for example, this decrease will save some money. As an example, a $100,000 home, this is a savings of about $101.46. Some may raise the question of why I voted to put this initiative on the ballot. I'd like to outline 3 reasons. I think first, as Mayor Stone noted, we have the most democratic gauge of our citizenry. We often hear feedback on any given issue. We saw that tonight, both for and against. So this is what gives us a tangible sense of what the citizens of Beavercreek think, even if they hold many different views. Second is that there have been a couple of successive Republican auditors of state in their annual assessments, and I have documentation from 2015 to 2019 that have noted the issue of having property tax as a driving revenue stream for the city to be a weakness. Our city, when you kick the tires, look around, we run on a very lean budget. Our staff does a tremendous job of saving money, and if you look at our budget in comparison to other jurisdictions, you will see the same. Moreover, the city budget has been hampered by recent events. We take the 2019 Memorial Day tornado as an example, or in 2020, where we felt the brunt of the COVID-19 crisis. We get an awful lot of money on grants and the sheer numbers, and that is sheer number of grants, which is a double-edged sword. It's very good for us as a city. We bring in a lot of money, but should that dry up, it becomes problematic. And so on this sheet from the Auditor of State, every year they assess prong number 10, and there are 17 criteria. And every year this is our problematic area, that is a lack of diversity in our revenue streams. Third, I would like to note that there is an estimated $200 million infrastructure issue, which could result in the future for numerous street levies over the course of the next few years. Citizens, myself included, can certainly quibble as to what needs to get done and what is a priority. But what everyone should know is that the city staff, council, we receive regular emails on infrastructure pertaining to roads, curbs, and stormwater. That is a significant concern to me, and as a large city, we are the second largest in the region behind Dayton, and we have an estimated 577 lane miles of paved road. That is 254 center lane miles. We need to upkeep that as an aging city. Going back to the issue of the 17 cents of which the city collects from property taxes for each dollar, As you can see, there's an abatement that will come with the street levy, and that will decrease the city's share of property taxes by 3.6 cents. That is a reduction of nearly a quarter of the property tax that comes to the city. So that will then leave 13.4 cents of city property tax of every 96.4 cents. And so finally, and in conclusion, I would encourage everyone, as I have done, to go to the city's webpage to look at the income and property tax calculator estimator. It's very helpful just to see where you are as a family, as an individual. I'd also ask everyone to assess the needs of the city, what's happening as a growing city of almost 50,000 residents. The FAQ page is regularly updated, and I know that Mr. Kucera will certainly welcome any other questions that have not been answered. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the time.
Well, thank you, sir. Councilmember Garcia, would you like to go next?
I don't have anything in addition tonight. Thank you.
Well, all right. Councilmember Schwartz?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Dorr, for that detailed presentation. Much appreciated. The one thing I wanted to mention is, as most of you know, I'm a member of Beavercreek Kiwanis, and for anyone that may be interested, we will be hosting a virtual open house on September 24th. If you join, you will get a free slice of pizza from Beavercreek Pizza Dive. We'll send you a gift certificate. That means if you join the meeting. If you join Kiwanis, you will get a free pizza. So I encourage all of you to attend and at least get to know a little more about Beavercreek Kiwanis. In that same vein, we will be hosting our annual auction in October, and so we are still in search of auction items. I know there are still a few businesses in Beavercreek that I intend to hit up for some auction items, so if there's anyone in the audience that has any ideas or would like to donate to the auction, it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Curran?
I don't have anything, Your Honor.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Didn't mean it quite the way it came out, sir. Councilmember Bales.
Well, I hate to disappoint, but I have a couple of points. Councilmember Schwartz, I think it's great that you mentioned Kiwanis, because one of the things I wanted to mention tonight was thank you to the Optimist Club. They put out flags around the community, I think 7 times a year, and they just put them out for the Labor Day holiday 5 times a year. Thank you for correcting me, Pete. But the flags look great when they're up and around our community, and so I think the club does a great job. I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of the public that came to express their views tonight. Certainly an interesting topic, one that I certainly understand both sides of, and so we'll see where that goes in the future. I wanted to thank staff for their work on the FEMA grant reimbursements for the tornado, and I also wanted to thank you for being as proactive as you were during the initial COVID outbreak, and really taking a look at the budget and retracting our spending a bit and taking some conservative looks at our property tax collections. And it's because of those efforts we just heard from the city manager that going into the budget cycle for next year, we're in relatively good shape. And so thank you for those efforts. I also wanted to congratulate Steve Click and Joe Moore, the professionals out at the golf club. Both of them have qualified to participate in a national golf event, and so they'll be representing our great city at those. And then finally, I just want to encourage everyone to get informed about the income tax. Please read, ask a lot of questions. There's going to be another Zoom presentation tomorrow at 6:30, and I think you just need to do a quick Google search to find out how to access that Zoom. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We seem to thank staff for every time we're here, but there's a reason for it, and they do a really good job in preparing us and just doing a great job for the city, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about that. But I also attended the Beavercreek Youth Development Committee. That's one of the organizations that I'm involved with. They've selected their officers. They haven't had a meeting yet in person for the kids, but they're planning to do that in the next month to try to decide what kind of projects they're going to do. Those of you that are familiar with that group, they do a lot of things to raise money to give back to the city. I know they've given money to the COPPs in the past and several other organizations within the city. That's very limited this year because they just don't have the fundraising. They normally raise that from their dances. But they are going to try to do what's called Rake and Run. It's a program for mostly seniors. They'll come and rake their leaves, and then they'll run to the next yard and rake their leaves. So if anybody's interested in that, you can get your name at the senior center, and they'll make sure that that's handed out. I also attended the 911 memorial service last Friday along with Councilman Schwartz and Mayor Stone, who, by the way, did an excellent job with the ceremony.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. To remember the tragedy that happened on September 11, 2001. It was an honor to remember the 60 police officers, 8 emergency medical technicians, and 343 firefighters that lost their lives that day. We should all remember that the men and women who work as first responders rush into situations that all of us are going to run away from. They put their lives on the line every day to protect and serve our communities, and I would like to thank all of the first responders here that we have in Beavercreek: police, fire, EMTs, paramedics, and dispatchers who serve our community every day. Also, this past weekend, the mayor and I participated in the Trek for Trikes 5K. It's a fundraiser for the local Ambucks group. They're called Green Bucks. This is an organization that provides adaptive bikes for physically challenged kids and veterans. They raised about $2,500 on Saturday, which will buy about 5 bikes. They cost about $500 a piece. Then they had their national Ambucks meeting, and Beavercreek, the group here, was named the Outstanding Chapter of the Year for their 4th year in a row. So congratulations to them. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. And thank you for scratching a few items off of my list. Census. Last meeting I brought it up, reminder. I just want to throw it out there one more time. If you haven't done it yet, fill out your census. It's only going to help our community. So please, please get out there and get the census filled out. Next, flu shots. I got mine last week. I sure did, and I'm still walking, so we're in good shape. If they give us a double dose, the senior dose. So, I mean, if we can handle it, by golly, the rest of you can. So get your flu shot. All indications are that it's going to be very confusing this flu season as to whether you have a COVID issue or whether you have the flu. And if you've had the flu shot, it helps them narrow it down a little bit, to going to assume that maybe it's COVID. Maybe get you that assumption a little quicker and treatment a little quicker. So I encourage everyone to certainly consider getting a flu shot, whether you've gotten it before. It does not make your arm fall off. It does not make you sore. It just helps to protect you from the flu. I had the privilege last week of speaking at the Soin Medical Center's ribbon cutting for their new building, their addition. And what they opened last week was intensive care unit. And they have 17 brand new intensive care units. Pete and I had the privilege today of touring those units, and they're quite remarkable in the technology. You know how technology, we think of it as our home computers and things, but the medical technology is really something to see as well. So we enjoyed that. Also had the privilege to take a tour of our new Greene County Career Center. It is quite a facility. If you haven't seen it yet, it's worth the trip out and get somebody to take you a walk around. They've built it such that it will be a work in progress for a while as needs or employment needs change, they have the flexibility to change. So they're moving right along. And then, since everybody else thanks staff, I do want to thank whoever's out there fixing the manhole covers. We started this a while back when I came on a while ago, but it is so remarkable how much a difference that little action makes. that you're not jarring yourself on a manhole cover. So thank you for doing that every year, and hopefully we keep that up, do a certain number every year, and it's a little effort that makes life a whole lot more enjoyable. With that, I'm finished for today, and we will turn it over to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that's the manhole covers are my pet peeve. So I, about a month ago, reached out and said, I have some suggestions, and I gave them Dayton-Xenia and North Fairfield, and voila, there they were. So it does make a difference. It really does.
I've
So
had a
thank
lot
you,
of
staff,
feedback
for-
from that.
Yeah, thank you, staff, for taking care of that. I do appreciate, too, the Sewing President Dodd's giving us the tour today. It's amazing. And one of the discussions with the president was, how this is just a beginning. They got the floors to fill up, it's going to go, and then they're talking about more expansion. It's just amazing what's happening at Sewing. We're very blessed to have them here in our community. A lot of us just take advantage of it that they're here, but it's like what's happening there, it's high tech, it's crazy. It really is. So we are blessed. So thanks for the tour, and if you get an opportunity, once this we'll see if others can get scheduled. I'm sure Rick would be more than glad to take a few more council members through. So tonight, real short here, road information. Kemp Road reconstruction. If you haven't noticed the construction on Kemp Road, and one of the biggest thing I will say, there was a complaint on that the left arrow going on to Grange Hall Road, is no longer there because with the new alignment, and realize the new pavement that was just laid, that's temporary pavement. That's not going to be where the road location is. They had to lay that to tear up the opposite side. But in order to have the road align, the left-hand turn lane, the left-hand arrow still works on Kemp Road to turn on the Grange Hall, but there's no dedicated left-hand turn. And it backs up. It backs up. I've seen it. I live close to there. It's horrible. It's one of those things that during the middle of construction, that's all you can do. You grin and bear it. If there was any alternatives, we would take that to lessen. But at the end of it, when we get it, the road widened there and walkways and everything else through there, it'll be a lot nicer. But with this road closure, beginning Monday, September 21st, Knoll Drive, south of Kemp Road, will be closed for approximately 2 weeks. And this is during the closure. I made a mistake probably a year or two ago of saying something about being closed, given no explanation as to why, just assuming it's construction. But I quickly learned to add why and what we're doing during that time. And during this closure, the grading and the storm sewer installation needed for the proper transition from the existing Knoll Drive to meet the new elevation of Kemp Road will be built. So that's why we're having to close that for 2 weeks. We don't like closing roads unnecessarily, but a lot of stuff going on. We have remember on construction. Yes, Kemp is really into it, but Dayton-Xenia will still see some this year, hopefully, to start. Remember, both of these projects go over 2 seasons, build seasons, construction seasons. So they're both grants, so they're both 2 years funded. And that's why you start late, because state fiscal year doesn't start till July 1st. So by the time it gets to the approval of the money, that's in August before you can even start bidding it out. You get why it starts mid-year. Yeah, we'd like to start in January, but that's not the way it works with grants when you're dependent upon that. So Dayton-Xenia is coming, and I'm sure we've had the gas lines and the telephone poles, electric. You guys have been seeing the poles being moved and some delays because of moving poles, but actual breaking of the ground of the road, it's coming soon, and we'll give notice when that is about to happen. And then a positive note, besides construction, is, well, something different. Try a truck drive-through. We cannot do it like we had. Oh man, that was fun last year. Tree Care came, who helped us out with the tornado with their big equipment as well. They participated, but the kids loved the fire trucks, the police cars, the big dump trucks with the big blade snowplow trucks, all the other people that participate and bring out things. It's been great. This is going to be different. This is going to be a drive-through. Kids will at least get close to see and view things, maybe a little closer, and maybe you can say, remember last year, and hey, remember you like that one this time, so maybe next year you'll be able to actually climb into it. So, but still, it's Saturday, October 3rd, 10 a.m. to noon. Participants are going to be required to stay in their cars. Families receive a goodie bag full of fun freebies and drive through the parking lot to see the heavy-duty equipment, police cars, fire trucks, and more. So unfortunately, we didn't cancel it, so that's a good thing. We're trying a drive-through. We hope to encourage people to still put the kids in the car and give them something to do and something to look at and get a bag full of fun freebies. I haven't heard what the freebies are yet, but something to look for. Please put on your calendar Saturday, October 3rd. And with that, Mayor, that's all I have tonight.
Well, thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen.
Quick question for him. Pete?
Yeah.
I know the fire department always does their open house at the same time. Do you have any idea what they're going to do?
I haven't heard if they will have that. My bet is they won't, unless they have a drive-through similar that they drive past it. So I haven't not confirmed. I can confirm that and get back with you and update everybody at the next meeting, because it will be prior to this. But I doubt if they'll have anybody going through the firehouse because of COVID or walking through.
Yeah, just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I will say one more thing for the record, because the calls are already coming in. And unless council decides otherwise, Halloween is always October 31st. That's what council's always went by. We're with the Mayors and Managers Association that dedicates that we're going to commit to being on October 31st, and that's it. At this point in time, unless the governor or the Greene County Public Health would shut it down and forbid it, it's October 31st, it's Halloween. Take every precaution, CDC guidelines, mask, hopefully there'll be mask anyway, but take all precautions. But at this time, we're telling everybody, unless there's some kind of public health or the governor would, the state public health would shut it down, it's on October 31st as far as we know. So okay. I know I've been getting the phones already are ringing, asking. Thank you.
All right. Now, citizen comment. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to address council on any issue at all? Anyone? Seeing none, we will move on. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.